Well, hello on this day of the 1st of December. Hello, hello. It's been a while since I've gone live. And given where we are at this point in the year, I thought there's no better time than right now to talk about this. Because I know a lot of us are thinking about going into this portal of the new year, and we're reflecting on the things that did or didn't work out. Hopefully you're not ruminating too much on the things that didn't work out, and you are being a collector of wins and thinking about and reviewing the things that did work out, the things that are in your arsenal of good feeling thoughts and allow you to feel, instead of, our go-to ruminating on negative thoughts, which allow us to feel disappointment in ourselves or what didn't happen, that when you're a collector of wins, that you're looking at the things that, you have done, the things you have accomplished, the things that you said that you were going to do, and you did them. You made commitments to yourself, you made promises to yourself, and you did them. So hopefully, that's a little tip for you guys. I will talk about that here in a second, to help you get in the right energy for moving into the portal of 2024. Hello, ladies. Welcome. So I want to talk about this because as we go into the new year, we're reviewing, the past 11 plus months of our lives. Maybe, we're thinking about where we were in January of this year and maybe where we were in December or November of, the year before. And, a lot of us, because this time of the year, the veil is very thin. We're in this time of darkness, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, where we are, in this place of deep introspection. We're in a place of review. We are taking inventory in a lot of ways. And so there couldn't be a better time for this call. So strap in, kiddos, because I want to talk about a few things that are really going to help you out here. So when you are thinking about what you want to accomplish in the coming year, okay? And, don't get hung up on the timeline of, January 1st, I got to start doing all this stuff. Like, you can start right now. You can start doing anything that you wish to accomplish. You can get the ball rolling and get some momentum with it now. There's no reason why you can't start already hot when January 1st presents itself to you, right? You can start getting the ball rolling now. And one way to start thinking about that is start really, really taking a good, long, hard look at what it is that you truly want. What is it that maybe in review and in light of this year's events, what are you deciding that, okay, now I have enough hindsight to say, well, I don't want that anymore. I'm not available for that anymore. How many times do I need to be beat over the head with that lesson? And you can be very clear about the things that you don't want. But I don't want you to confuse these two categories or kind of conflate them. What you don't want is, maybe a stepping stone for getting you in the right direction of what you do actually want. But let those two things kind of be separate. Let them exist as kind of contrast for each other, but don't blend them together. Because when we do that, we kind of get into this weird limbo emotional place of, I want this thing, but I remember all the times that it didn't happen, and I remember all the things that didn't work out, and blah, 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 blah. And then we start to conflate ourselves with, we say we want this thing, but we're remembering and reviewing all the times that we said we wanted it before and it didn't work out. I hope that makes sense. So you don't need to do that to yourself, okay? You don't need to do that to yourself. Let them be separate. Let what you don't want, what you're no longer available for, just be contrast. Let it just live. Let it just live out there, in the ether as something that you have reference to, but it no longer has to create any meaning about who you are, right? You don't have to vote on what happened. You don't have to say, this is still me. It's a new day. You're a new person. Every day you wake up, you're a new person. It's a clean fucking slate. And whether you decide to anchor into that truth or not is entirely up to you. But it is true. Who you were 10 minutes ago, who you were 10 years ago, if you're deciding that's your identity, then it will be. And if you're deciding that, lesson learned, lesson downloaded, complete, I don't need to do that to myself anymore. And I don't need to kind of keep myself locked down in my consciousness by saying, this is still me, this is still me, this is who I am. It's not. It's something that happened to you. My clients get sick of me saying this, I think. or they need the reminder. I don't know. Somewhere in between that, you know, what happened to us lives in the moment. It belongs to the moment. It doesn't belong to you. So wherever you're taking ownership of that and then creating a whole identity or a way of defining yourself around it, you don't need to do that to yourself, okay? So I'm giving you permission right here, right now. If you didn't know this prior to coming to this call, there you go. You don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to identify yourself with what happened 10 years ago or 10 minutes ago, okay? So let yourself off the hook for that. If you really want to anchor into what it is that you want to bring in, magnetize to yourself in 2024, the best way to do that is be neutral, right? And it's hard for us in a world of duality. We are in this reality realm of duality and an illusion of separation. And we are playing with contrast here to learn how to grow, to remember who we truly are, right? So it's just contrast. It doesn't have to say anything about you. It doesn't have to mean anything. You don't have to vote on whether that means you're a good or a bad person. None of that shit matters. That's all stuff that lives in your own brain and is driving you crazy. So be as neutral as you can by just saying, okay, well, this happened and that happened. Okay, interesting. I can be curious about what's everything that's not that. What's everything that's not that? And when you start asking questions like that, well, it gets juicy, doesn't it? And you're like, ooh, a lot of shit is not that. A lot of stuff. So let the things that you don't want, that you're not available for, just be contrast. And then start thinking about, okay, what is it that I really, really want? What do I really want to do? What would I like to accomplish? What is something I would like to magnetize into my reality? What is something that would really be so juicy, really light a fire, really inspire me to not only have this, but then it would be a catalyst for me creating and making more things around this, right? Like really let yourself go with it. Create some time now, this week, this weekend, you know, get cozy, get in your PJs, get your favorite little cashmere shawl that keeps you cozy and go sit in a quiet place and really think about it. And don't get into all those, you know, what ifs that lead you back to the contrast. Well, what if I'm not allowed to have it? That's not true. What if I don't deserve it? That's not true. What if I'm not worthy? That's not true. What if this is meant for other people and it's not meant for me? That's not true. None of those things are true. So just let yourself kind of, you know, freewheel it without voting on it or judging on why you can't have it or why you shouldn't have it or you're not allowed to have it. That fucked up thing you did to your friend in the 4th grade made you a terrible person, so you're not allowed to have that. None of that matters. Just allow yourself to just kind of be open. Have some fun with it. You know, let your mind go wild, okay? Unleash your mind, okay? And when you start to come up with 2 or 3 juicy ideas, stop there. Stop there. Because the 2 or 3 things that are going to come up and be first and foremost in your mind and pop up first and foremost in your consciousness, those are the things that your intuitive self, your higher self is saying, this is you. This we're close to this already. And the reason why things present themselves first and foremost in your mind is because really it's you're almost there. Okay? And that's the way I've learned to look at this. Like the things that come up that say, oh, that's interesting. Why is that popping up? Well, because you're already holding a certain vibration of it. It might just be the preamble to it. It might just be the preface for it. But if it's first and foremost in your mind, that means you've already got to tether to that energy. Does that make sense? So just take that as your first sign, your first intuitive nudge, you know, your first download or message from a higher power that says, here, this thing, it's right here. And the resources, when you start thinking like, okay, if it's presenting itself to me this way, that means the resources are there. I may not know exactly how, and this is where we really shoot ourselves in the foot, how I'm going to put all the resources together or how the resources are going to show up or where I'm going to source them from. Hint, hint, they're all in you. None of that matters. If you can surrender and kind of free fall into this idea that, well, if it comes up so easily in my consciousness, I know it's meant for me. And what you're really glimpsing and what you're having awareness of is something that already is. It's already existing. Because the moment you seek for something, you've already found it, in a sense. It's already fully fleshed out. And if you can hold some vision of it in your mind, then you can hold it in your hand. And yes, I'm using a metaphor here, or a simile. I get those confused. But you are basically already in the energy and the presence of it. Just because it hasn't showed up as evidence or proof in 3D physical reality yet doesn't mean that you're like this close to it. And the thing is, usually we are. And it's not that we are creating abundance. It's not that we are manifesting abundance. It's that what we're really doing as humans is creating limitations to it. It's all already here. You're already all part of that. So we don't create abundance. We don't manifest abundance. It's all already here because creation is finished. Okay. So when you have awareness of this thing that you want, think of it this way. What you're really looking at or having awareness of is the timeline where that thing already exists. It's already there. There's already a version of you that's experiencing it. Otherwise, you would have no awareness of it. So that's proof positive, if you can call it that this thing you want, it's already here. You're just not currently occupying the vibration to be able to sustain and maybe even mobilize yourself, your vibration towards pulling it in. But that doesn't mean the timeline doesn't exist. If you have awareness of it, that means it does exist. That means that a version of you is already enjoying this thing, expressing itself by having this thing, okay? So here's what I want to get into the juiciness around this. And I'm going to tell you two stories. And those of you who are in my classes and programs, you've heard these stories before. So get some popcorn, strap in, grab a beer, make yourselves comfortable. You've heard these stories before, but I'm going to tell them anyway. So once you've kind of got a solid lock on what it is that you do want, and it, 2 or 3 things, like don't overload yourself. There's no reason to overwhelm yourself, because those 2 things that pop up maybe that are first and foremost in your mind, they will lead you to the other things that are even more excellent and even more abundant and prosperous for you. Trust me. So when these things come up, keep these things close. Keep those cards close to your chest. And here's why. So when we are working with something really juicy and big, and what I've really done this year, and I'm quite proud of myself for it, is I decided to dream really big. I decided to not just go for, well, if I just can get this, then I'll have enough. Like that was my thinking for my entire frigging life. If I can just have this, or I can get this number of clients, then I'll get this paid and that paid. And always with, the sensibility of, I'll have just enough. And what a crutch that is, and what bullshit it is. And the thing is, like, I was always able to call that in. I was always supported. But, the real stretch in our consciousness is to say, well, if you're good at pulling in just enough, if you're good at like sliding into home base 2 days before rent is due and coming up with the cash in hand for your landlord and all that stuff, then if you could do that, then you can just as easily have the essence and the sensibility of being in overflow. Sorry. Of being in a place of more than enough. Right? Doesn't that make sense? If you can do that, where you can, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get all your shit together, all your ducks in a row at the end of every month to get your mortgage paid, all your bills paid and all that stuff, and have a little bit of money left over for maybe some fun and nice organic groceries. If you could do that, then why can't you live in a place of overflow? You absolutely can. It's just, again, that abundance exists, but we are creating limitations to that abundance. Yes? So I started going really big with my desires this year, and pretty bold with my aspiration and goals. At this point, and I had about 9 of them, and 7 of them have already happened, and in ways that were much better than I thought they were going to be, because that's what it's like to be intuitively guided. Shit usually ends up showing up in way, way better ways than you could ever imagine in your own mind. So I didn't really tell anybody about it. And I'm certainly not going to tell you what my other 2 are that I haven't met yet, because in the spirit of keeping my cards close to my chest, I don't let anyone else's ideas opinions, assumptions, perspective, perceptions, misconceptions poison the well of what it is that I am magnetizing. Okay? Because we are very suggestible beings, and we are very suggestible beings because about 95% of our operating behavior is dictated by the subconscious mind, which is just a sponge. It'll just take in with an impartial nature, meaning it doesn't care what it's taking in. If the impression is strong enough, if there's an emotional underpinning or an emotional connection to it that's very vital, your subconscious will just take it in. This is how we learned how to be who we were up until about age 7, and still until we started to kind of, reconfigure the things that we were downloading hypnotically, basically, about the nature of reality through our parents, our peers, our school, whatever, our church. When we understand that if you keep your own counsel, kind of stay in your own lane, especially when you are working on something really juicy, really big, really bold, don't tell anybody about it. Because your dreams will be DOA. What is DOA? Dead on arrival. They are dead in the water, face down. There's no life in them. Because the second you have someone say to you, oh, that can never happen. Who do you think you are? And you might even have that happening in your own head, okay? And that's a little bit easier to corral, those cats than it is when you have, someone else's opinions and best advice telling you, oh, I just don't want you to get hurt. I just want you to be safe. And I can't tell you how many times I heard that until I realized, I'm just not going to tell anybody anymore what I'm working on. I don't even tell my clients. I don't even tell my husband, and I love him and I tell him everything. But when I'm working on stuff that's really out there, and one of the things is something that I'm going to share in the Paradigm Shift Blueprint Masterclass that starts on Wednesday, where we're going to work with collective cognition, and we're going to work with identity recalibration, and we're going to work with the superview alchemy. The superview alchemy is a great example of what I'm talking about, that if I was to tell anybody what I was working on when I was tapping into this and figuring it out, not only would, even my husband, who knows that, I'm a kook, I do stuff that's out of the box. I'm an innovator. I am a maverick. I am a rebel. I like to do things that other people aren't doing. I like to reconfigure things. I like to test things out. I like to experiment. I'm a natural problem solver and innovator, and I love to think outside of the box. But not everyone is going to understand that in the effective staging process of getting this thing, whatever I'm working on, to a place where I can explain it and deliver it to other people, where it makes sense and it's practical and it's tangible and applicable to people's lives. Until it gets to that point, I'm like a crazy lady. I'm like, rah! And it's fun because I love to create. And I love to tap into deep esoteric knowledge, and I love to tap into the field, and I love to work with timelines, and I love all this stuff. But in the phases where I'm working all this stuff out, I don't tell anybody about it. Because most people, even my own husband, would look at me like I have 3 heads. And this probably would turn into a straitjacket, not a nice cashmere shawl. So when you're working on stuff that to you seems perfectly sane, that to you feels like big and juicy, and maybe it's a stretch for you, like it's stretching your consciousness, or it makes you feel like, this is crazy, this is crazy, this is crazy, but it still feels good. It still feels yummy. It still is lighting you up. You still feel inspired, and you still feel like, this is leading me somewhere, and I actually feel led by something bigger than me. I actually feel led by spirit in a way, or I feel really tapped into source when I think about this thing. Like, I'm not working with the logical mind here. I'm not working with rational analysis. I'm working with something else. And it's in my gut, or it's in my heart, or I feel it in my big toe. Like, you feel it anywhere except, like a pulsing feeling behind the eyes, or you feel it in your temples. You feel it in different parts of your body. And you feel tingly. You feel like you're connecting into a field of intelligence that is, kind of guiding you and leading you towards things that don't make sense at all to your rational mind. But to another part of you, it's like, this is just good. This is just good stuff. So when you're in that territory, I'm telling you, don't tell anybody about it. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. Keep your own counsel. Know that you're not crazy. You're working with something that is inherent to who you are, because you are spirit masquerading as a human. You are just one point, a very important expression and point of attraction in all of the field of consciousness itself that makes you as unique as a snowflake. So the ideas and the things that come to you, they're meant to come to you because they're meant to be expressed by you. And what do we do a lot of the time when we have stuff that's really big and juicy and we're like, this is too big, this can't be for me. Who am I to bring this forth? Who am I to talk about this? Who am I to even work on this? Who am I to even spend any time in my mind thinking about this? What you're doing, you're pushing away at the greatest gift there is, which is Source saying, hey, we've got something especially for you and only you. Here you go. And what do we usually do? We go back to reviewing all the times that we fucked up, or we made mistakes, or we had missteps, or there were pitfalls, or we made a bad decision, and blah, 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 blah. Don't do that to yourself. Instead, get excited. Get excited. And if for some reason it slips out, like you get so excited, sometimes I get a little too excited and I'll start talking about things like I'll have a few beers, maybe a Manhattan, and Jimmy and I'll be sitting at a bar and I'll start talking about stuff. And sometimes we can get into it. If he's had a few drinks too, he's more likely to get into it with me. But I'll start talking about what I'm working on because sometimes I just have to tell somebody. And then, sometimes he'll be like, well, what if this and what if that? And I'm like, this is why I don't tell people. This is why. Because, and I don't think Jimmy is a muggle, but he is a little bit in a lot of ways. He's an extremely practical person. He's a Scorpio, and he likes concrete things, and even though he's a lot more psychic than I am in a lot of ways, he's very practical. And so we're very good for each other because he's my grounding rock and my boulder, and I'm the one that's like, let's do this. It doesn't make sense, but let's do it anyway. So I'll give you a perfect example of that. So when, I've had people tell me before, don't do that. That's crazy. No one does that. And, and it's almost like a challenge to me. It's like throwing down the gauntlet, and I'm like, okay, hold my beer and watch me do this. That's who I've been my whole life. I don't expect it to ever stop or ever change. And I kind of like that about myself because from that kind of spitefulness, maybe, or maybe an ego need to prove people wrong. I don't know. It's like a challenge for me, and I love it. I'm like, I know I can do it, and I'm going to do it in ways that I don't even know how right now, but I'm going to figure it out. And I've always had that kind of spirit, and that comes to the work that I do and the teaching and the mentoring that I do, but it also comes to the way that I approach life. And so I'll give you one story. I'm going to give you two. But when I had first moved to San Francisco, so this was, the second time. I moved in 1993, but when I moved in 1997, I was living with a friend of mine in the Tenderloin area of San Francisco, and I didn't have any money. I had some savings. I had some credit cards, and I was like, I could just work in food service, but I've done that, and I've done that, and I've done that. And I was, I had been a bartender, and I was a waiter, and I was a cook. I was like, I don't want to work in another restaurant. I know the money would be really good in this town, but I don't want to do that. And I always wanted to work in a cosmetic company, a skincare company, because I had worked in a food co-op in Buffalo where I had grown up and went to Buffalo State College, and I was kind of running the vitamins and supplements and skincare department at the co-op and doing the ordering and the buying and whatever. And during that time, I learned how to make my own skincare and shampoo and all kinds of products. And so I had to learn about chemistry and emulsions and saponins and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? There is a skincare company here that is local to San Francisco, and it's small, but I want to work there. And they weren't hiring. I know they weren't hiring because I was looking for that. And then I found out where they were in a part of town, and I visited there. Right? You got it, Suzanne. If you tell me I can't or I'm not going to do it, I'll do it. Yeah, a lot of us are that way because we're just like, watch me. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you how to do it. So I went to the human resources manager and I was talking to her, and I had made a nice resume and a cover letter, and I was very excited. And she's like, yeah, this is great. And, you know, you don't have a whole lot of qualifications, but, you know, I see what you did here and whatever, but we're not hiring. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So I'll call you again next week. And I was, okay, in 1997, so I was 25. I didn't know shit about shit. I thought I did. And I just wouldn't take no for an answer. And this poor woman, I wore down her resolve. I, you know, kept just coming back, but it was always very positive, and I was engaging and charismatic. And, you know, I talked about all the things I could do for the company and whatever. And wouldn't you know that after about 6 weeks of just unrelenting commitment, she finally called me up and she said, you know, we could use another person on the customer service line. So that would mean that you'd be, you know, answering calls, because we're expanding our team so that someone can work Saturdays. So what you would be doing is coming in from 7:30 to 2:30 on Tuesday through Saturday. And you'd be the only person here on Saturday taking calls and, you know, on our 1-800 customer line, answering questions and selling products and taking orders and whatever. And I was like, yeah, yes, absolutely. I'm in. I'll do it. And so there was that. They weren't hiring. The lady she didn't really want anything to do with me. She didn't think I was qualified. And very funny story, the man who worked in the shipping department, who got to be a very good friend of mine, said, you know, she just got tired of, of you constantly hounding her. So she just gave in. Anyway, I worked there for a while. I really loved it, before I moved to Hawaii. Another story, you know, where you just don't let what anyone says to you. If you know that something is meant for you and you know you can do it, don't let anyone else's best advice or, you know, well, I've had this happen before, no one's done that before, whatever. Like, if you're paying attention to any of that, your dreams, I'm telling you, your goals, your aspirations, they are DOA, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that you should be going against someone's free will. Don't stalk people if you're interested in a romantic partner and, you know, get yourself incarcerated. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about things that, you know, that are for your highest good and the highest good of all. And whenever I'm doing things like this, I always have that in mind. You know, I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm not, you know, interested in taking away something from someone. But if I know something is meant for me, and if I can frame it in this premise that this is for the highest good of me and for the highest good of all, because if I'm in a place that's supported, then I can be in a place where I'm in overflow and I can support others. And I approach everything in life really with that premise. And so far, so good. It's worked out really well. So a couple years back, when I was living in Tahoe, we had a huge wildfire, and the town of South Lake Tahoe, California had to be evacuated. This was a really, really hard time. This was in August of 2021. And my husband and I were already planning. We had already kind of had enough of Tahoe. It was just an overrun touristy town. Everything changed there after COVID. You had people buying up all the real estate, buying up all the vacation homes, and it was an Airbnb nightmare. And it was just overrun with a lot of things geared towards tourists and no interest for the locals and no protection for the locals. And it was just a party paradise. It felt like spring break all the time up there. So we had already planned to get out. We were planning on moving up here to Washington State, to Bellingham, where I live now. But the wildfire happened, and our whole timeline got accelerated. Everything around the Tahoe Basin was on fire. It was absolutely devastating, and it was going on for weeks until, you know, finally we were about not even a week out, 5 days from our scheduled U-Haul truck pickup, where we're going to put everything that we had packed up and get it in there and get the F out of the state. We had policemen from the South Lake Tahoe Police Department knocking on the door saying, you got to go. Mandatory evacuation. And it was fucked. We were like, this house still going to be here? Is the rest of our stuff that's still in boxes that we can't fit in our 2 trucks, is that going to be here? So we got out, and, you know, I just kept saying, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. The town's going to be here. And I just held the highest vision for that, highest good of all involved. And we get up here, And our timeline, as I mentioned, was a little accelerated. So we spent a little more time taking our time to get up here. We were in Bend, Oregon for a while. We did a little camping. We hung out. We stayed at a couple nice hotels. Like we did what we could to kind of soothe our very dysregulated nervous systems. I was on edge for like 2 weeks before we left Tahoe, just constantly thinking like I'm going to wake up to a house in cinders. So it was a really difficult time. And then we got up here. We didn't have anywhere to stay. We had like a small, like a 1-bedroom lease rental that we could have for a couple weeks until we found a house. Now, like everywhere else, the housing market was cuckoo bananas. Everything was super inflated for whether you wanted to buy a house or rent a house. And for us, with a dog, I was like, we're not getting an apartment. There's no way I'm getting an apartment. I know I'm not available for that. I was like, I want a house. I want to be near the park. I want to have a huge backyard. I want trees. I want nice neighbors. I want at least a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And when we started telling our friends about this, who are already living here, and they were telling their friends, because they were putting the word out to everybody, this is what we're looking for, again, people looked at me like I had 3 heads, like, how much money do you have to spend? And I was like, I don't know. I'd like to get it for under $2,000 a month. And, people would, be incredulous and say, there's no way. There's no way you can get that. You're not going to find that up here. Not only is there like no houses available, but that price, forget about it. What you're asking for, you're not going to find it for less than $3,500. Guess what my reaction was? Hold my beer. So I got to work. And Jimmy and I sat down and I was like, look, I can absolutely do this, but it's even faster and more efficient if we do it together. So I was like, we're going to magnetize this house, but we have to get on board with each other so that we're holding the exact same vision of what we want, when we want it, how much we want to spend. Like, we have to nail it and get really specific about it. And I know sometimes when people talk about magnetizing new realities, be general, don't be specific. I call bullshit on that. Get very specific. That doesn't mean that what you want is going to show up exactly like that. But you're going to get something that matches that vibration. So the more specific you are, the better the outcome is going to be, the better the result. So we got on the same page. And every day, we were sitting down and we were talking about it together. We were talking about like what it was going to be like to have Finn in the backyard and running around and, enjoying like chasing that stick or chasing the squirrel. And we really loved Whatcom Falls Park. And this is a beautiful park that I happen to live right near. It's at the end of my street, where it's such a beautiful series of trails that leads to the interurban trails that takes you through all the parts of the city. And I was like, these are the kind of neighbors that I want. This is the kind of neighborhood that I want. This is what I want to spend. I want it to be a 2-level house, not a single level house. And we have to have a driveway. We have to have a garage. I need my own office, like all of these things. Okay. And so, yeah, it wasn't looking good. And the time that we had to stay in the place that was on a short-term lease, that time was running out. And then a very good friend of ours gave us a call. And she said, there's a lady who lives 2 blocks from us, and she's a friend of a friend of a friend. So she didn't even really know this person. It was kind of through the grapevine. She's a teacher, someone she knew at work who had a friend and a friend and a friend. She's like, she has a house. It's 2 blocks from where we live. It's a block from Whatcom Falls Park. And it's a house, and it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Actually, it's a 5-bedroom. It is a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's got a garage and a yard and whatever. There's a lady living there, but that's just so she can be there long enough until her house is built. She's building a house in Linden, which is about a half hour from here. And she has kind of an indefinite stay there, but here's the lady who owns the house. She lives in Oregon. She's a nurse. It's her house. She bought it when she was a nurse here in Bellingham. She moved to Oregon and she keeps the house, and she's the one that's, who owns it and whatever, and rents it out. So we got on the phone with this lady. Jimmy did, actually, my husband, and just had a really nice conversation with her. And we kind of nailed like the specifics of what was going on, what our situation was, told her, our whole situation. We got to know each other on the phone. This was all done over the phone, by the way. And she really liked us. We really liked her. And she said, you know, I live in Oregon. I'm not going to come there to meet you guys in person. But here's the thing, the lady that's living there, she is, you know, in the process of moving out. So why don't you go over and meet with her, see what her timeline is, and see if that works with your timeline. And if you guys can make it work, you guys can have the house. And we're like, oh, okay, great. And she's like, you know what? I'm only going to charge you what I pay for my mortgage, which is less than $2,000, okay? A good amount less than that. And she's like, you don't have to worry about security deposit or anything because that's, you guys seem all right. And we're like, oh, what? So coming from California, where in a lot of places are really, really extractive and people charging ridiculous amounts, especially if you have a pet. For a security deposit, people charge pet rent and a whole bunch of ridiculousness like that. This was unheard of. This was unheard of. So we talked to the lady who was living here and got her timeline for when she was going to get out. And we said, you know, we really have to get out of our place. So we need to get in here by the last week of October. And at this point, it was like the second week of October. And she's like, yeah, no problem. I can make it work. I can, you know, my husband's coming back from Alaska because he was like a fisherman for hire in Alaska. So he worked there for most months out of the year. She's like, he's coming back. So he's going to help me move all the stuff into the new house. And it's almost done being built. Just the final finishing touches. And then I'll be out by, I think she said October 28th. And we're like, okay. And it all happened so fast. Our heads were spinning. We were so overwhelmed. And we you know, after meeting the lady that lived here and talking to our landlord again, she was like, yeah, so you guys are good to move in on the 1st. And we sent her the money and no security deposit. We're like, yeah, we have a dog and whatever. We can send you pictures and we have references and whatever. She's like, you don't have to worry about that. I was floored. I couldn't believe it. But, you know, we had held that vision together, which made it even more powerful, kind of doubled, you know, the excitement and the exhilaration and the promise and the knowing that this was just going to show up. It's a foregone conclusion. And even when, you know, we were telling other people what we wanted and whatever, and they were like, you're never going to find that up here. That's crazy. Not at this time. There's no houses. And certainly no one is going to give you something for that price for what you're asking for. That's where I live right now. This is it. This is the house. So you can't let other people's ideas or how things are done or what's acceptable for normal people, normal acceptable behavior. You don't have to prescribe to any of that at all. You don't have to. You don't have to play that game if you don't want to. And the more that you do this, and you have things in your arsenal, your memory arsenal, of all those times that you went against the grain, you did something and you produced results where everyone said you're going to fail. We don't want to see you disappointed. This isn't going to work out that way. Things don't happen like that. Blah, 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 blah. And the more you do this, and you have proof, you have all these wins that you've amassed, and you can look at them and say, yeah, I remember that time. And I'm just giving you 2 examples. There's more. And the 7 things that I manifested this year, is too many things to go into and too many details. But they all worked out. And not only that, they worked out better than I thought they were going to work out. And they came along faster because I had such a resolve, such a knowing. And it's not even expectation. Expectation is kind of like the walking before you learn to run. When you're talking about magnetizing your desires, you walk first by expecting things to show up. And then when you get running, that's when you know. When you know that you know that you know that you know, you are at like mastery level of magnetizing reality to you in the way that suits you best for the highest good of you and the highest good of all. And you can absolutely do this. You can absolutely do this. And then the more the wins that you have, when you feel that doubt, when you maybe hear someone saying to you, oh, you can't do that or whatever, if you let it slip what you're working on, as I sometimes do, You'll have the proof and the evidence of all those wins that happened, even when circumstances and conditions would have told you otherwise, would have dictated that it was going to not work out. And the more that you collect those wins, the more you realize, I'm just a natural born creator. I'm here to create reality that is bespoke to me. I'm not creating reality that works for that other person over there that says they can't do that. That's their perception. That is how they conceive reality. It's not how I conceive reality. My path is my path. What works for me works for me. And that's all I have to concern myself with. Now, it takes some practice to get to this place. It takes some dedication, but I promise you it's worth it. So, the things that I've been working on and been gearing up to share with you, if you want to get some practice with this, if you want some of this energy, and you want to have this kind of inspiration, and you want to have this drive, and you want to build some momentum that's going to carry you into the threshold of 2024, hitting the ground running already with the energy of what you want, the energy of how to do it, some very concrete steps. And it's not even a method, it's just steps that you follow and you kind of work it through. And it's comprehensive, this stuff that I share. It builds. So the more you do it, the more you do it, the more you do it, the more you're establishing your vibration. The more you are becoming a magnet for all the things that you are creating in your mind that you want. And so if you really want to get practice with this, and especially if you've been working on something for a while, maybe you already know what you want, and maybe you haven't had good luck with that this year. Okay, well, what's really going on is there's an identity mismatch. And that's an easy thing to clear up. That's an easy thing to switch up. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about identity recalibration, which is going to be a guided energy activation I'm going to take you through. We're going to be talking about collective cognition and tapping into that, tapping into the genius infinite mind and how to do that, how to kind of drag and drop certain hive mind connections that happen in the infinite mind and bring that into your own mind. That's the super view alchemy, and I'm beyond excited to share that with you. This is 3 days, this masterclass, Paradigm Shift Masterclass, and we start on the 6th. So this is the 6th, 7th, and 8th, of December. It's at 12 p.m. Pacific time. If you've enjoyed this talk, you're really going to enjoy these 3 days together. And I don't know what you're doing to prepare your energy for 2024. Maybe you're joining a program. Maybe you're, journaling. Maybe you're doing all kinds of stuff. But if you want to kind of catapult, not even kinda, if you want to absolutely catapult the energy that you have driven towards your realization of potentials that you most desire, let's do this. So I'm going to put the details down here below. I know, I can't wait either, Angelica. I'm very excited. I'm very excited. So yes, there it is. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Lots of love to you all. And I hope to see you in Paradigm Shift Blueprint Masterclass, December 6th, 7th, and 8th, 12 p.m. Pacific time. All the calls will be on Zoom. And there's no Facebook group. It's just on Zoom, but the replays will be available in the member vault. So you'll have them as long as you like. You're going to have downloads so you can work through some of these exercises and have some tools with the things I'm going to show you that are concrete and written out so that you can keep using these tools over and over again. You're going to want to. You're going to want to for whatever it is you're magnetizing. I can't wait. I hope to see you there. Bye-bye.